Hello, Ramley and other NFL family, especially Bears family. We have another episode of MOOF. Today we're talking about the Chicago Bears, one of the teams that, a lot of teams have been picking wins against. So I'm excited for my guest today, APW Sports, to let me and all of you know what are Bears fans optimistic about heading into this season. Because if you can't be optimistic about your team at this time of year, when can you be? And that's what MOOF is all about. We're interviewing one fan from every NFL team. Really excited to be on episode 20 here. My guests will join me right after this. And join me today is APW Sports. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm well. We're getting so close to the NFL season. Preseason's right around the corner, and it's enough of this. It's kind of the dull season where there's not a lot to talk about with the NFL, but we're getting there. We don't have to talk about Baker Mayfield every day.
Right. That's finally over with.
But APW, we always like to start off these shows a little bit. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you become a Bears fan? Do you have a favorite Bears player from the past? I see you're wearing a Justin Fields jersey, I'm assuming.
Of course.
Do you have any other jerseys that you own?
I own a couple of them. I own the old Brandon Marshall jersey, Lance Briggs jersey. I had a Trubisky jersey, but we all know how that went. But I would say my favorites, because I've past and present. So favorite player from the past offensively, of course, is Sweetness. I believe the greatest running back ever. Present offensively, of course, is Fields. Been a fan of him since he was at Ohio State. Defensively, from my past, I grew up watching Brian Urlacher, so I would say he was my favorite. And now I would say Roquan, who I believe is one of the more underrated linebackers in football.
Okay. All right. Yeah, definitely. Hey, there again, Bears very much a historic NFL franchise with some great, great legendary players in it. And I remember growing up seeing pictures of Brian Urlacher, and I remember having a discussion in my high school locker room after gym class, being like, man, the one person in the NFL that would scare me if I ever ran into them and they were mad at me was Brian Urlacher.
I actually met him one time. He's actually a really nice guy, though.
Oh, I believe it. He's jacked, right?
He is jacked, though.
Yeah. And shout out to Silly Fun Guy, and we got Grandizer in the chat, and also Culture. Good to see you all. Thanks for joining us live today. We already kind of touched on some of Grandizer's question, but we'll go to if you could maybe follow up. Is how did you become a Bears fan?
It's actually birth. My dad was actually one of the head of security for the Bears when I was growing up.
No way.
Yeah, he's worked security for the Bears growing up, so I got little small access to different things like fan conventions, games, and things like that. So it was actually passed on from him because he was one of the biggest Bears fans probably I've ever known. So I guess that was just passed down on to me, and I took the reins and became a Bears fan myself.
That's awesome. Very, very cool. And then Grandizer always loves to ask, are there any draft picks that you really loved or wanted that the Bears picked in this year's draft?
Actually, I am extremely happy with this draft. They've addressed need, which was the main thing, was a corner outside of Jalen Johnson and get another safety outside of Eddie Jackson. So I really like what they did on the defensive side of the ball in this draft. Now, a lot of Bear fans were screaming wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. Mm-hmm. They got one in Velus Jones later on in the draft, which I like that pick as well. Offensive line, of course, was a need. They addressed that in the later rounds. So they went into this draft more addressing needs versus want and just getting the best players available at that board for their position, their needs. So I actually liked what the Bears did with this draft.
Okay. Awesome. Well, and again, I've been excited to do this episode. I'm excited for every episode of Move, but
Yes.
I have to say this: the Bears have been one of the teams that's been getting a little disrespected, and so
Yeah.
I'm excited to I know you've seen some of them, but I'm excited to hear a Bears fan's perspective on their NFL season, and. We're going to get into that. But before we do, could you tell our viewers and myself what are Bears fans optimistic about heading into this season?
The main thing that most Bears fans are optimistic about is we get an offense outside of Matt Nagy. We finally get to see Justin Fields in a different element outside of Nagy's system. We finally get to see him under a real offense and finally get to see him develop. And I think this year for the Bears is more going to be about developing Fields and making sure he's comfortable, making sure he's growing. So we're finally going to see that. And of course, they also have a new defense switching from a 3-4 to a 4-3. So it's a lot of optimism because we don't have no expectations at all. None at all. Because everything is new, whether it's coaching staff, they traded Khalil Mack, they got rid of a lot of guys. So it's optimistic to see just how are they going to look in 2022 on both sides of the football.
Hey, a fresh start is always a reason for optimism, right?
Yes.
Grandizer here. I don't know if this is something you do on your. He said, "Do you ask for Air Bear
hugs?" I've never heard that one before. I've never heard that one.
That's funny. Well, let's get into this here. But before we do, if you're watching live with us now, thanks for tuning in. Or if you're watching on the replay, appreciate you doing that as well. If you are watching live, as we predict game by game, put a W in the chat if you think that the Bears are going to win the game. Put an L in the chat if you think they're going to lose. And if there's always that one person, Grandizer, looking at you, who predicts a tie. And you can predict the tie as well. Put a T in the chat. We like to give shout outs. Here we go. Week 1, I know Ram fans are going to be cheering the Bears on September 11th, the opening season. You have a home opener. You welcome in the San Francisco 49ers, win or lose.
This one is going to be a very close game. The Niners, I don't know who they're going to start at quarterback. I think it's going to be Trey Lance himself, but I'm going to have to chalk this one up as an L for the Bears, mainly because I think the 49ers defense is going to get a little bit of a hold on this Bears offense. So I think this one is going to start off rough. It's going to be a close game, but the Bears ended up coming out with the loss on this one.
Okay. It's first game of the year, no big deal. And I see Grandizer also predicting the L there. And then you are on the road, and you get to head to Lambeau Field early in the season to take on the Green Bay Packers. Win or lose? I know you don't like the Packers.
That is going to be, I hate to do it to my Bear fans, but that is going to be another loss. That is going to be another loss. I'm not going to believe the Bears can beat the Packers until I actually see it happen. I'm not going to believe it. Aaron Rodgers has our number. I hate it when he said he owns us, but it's the truth. It's the truth. He owns the Bears, and until I see it with my own two eyes that the Bears beat them legitimately, I can't pick the Bears against the Packers. Can't do it.
Okay. So you're 0-2 to start, but week 3, you have a home game, and you welcome in the Houston Texans. Can this be the Bears' first win of the season?
It will. I believe this will be the first Bears win of the season. Shout out to Lovie Smith, new head coach in Houston. I personally love Lovie Smith. Mm-hmm. I just think Houston doesn't have enough. They're still in a rebuilding stage. It's kind of similar to the Bears. I think the Bears are a little bit further along in their rebuild. But at the end of the day, I don't think Houston has enough to compete with the Bears. So I think this is the game where the Bears get their first win.
Okay. And then Bears fans are like, haha, take that. We're take that NFL. We're not going 0-17. We gotta win. But then you got a road trip to New York to take on the Giants. Win or lose?
That one is gonna be a close game. The Giants did I still think they did a lot in the draft, and I still think they done a lot. But I think the Bears, just like last year, will come out of this game victorious. I'm not a big believer in Daniel Jones. I don't think he's going to move the needle against the Bears this year. I don't think he's going to move the needle at all. But in this particular game, I think Robert Quinn and them are going to get after him. They got some young offensive line prospects, but I just don't think Daniel Jones is going to move the needle enough to beat this Bears' new 4-3 defense.
Okay, fair enough. Shout out Robert Quinn, former Ram. Always have to, give him I know he's doing well with you guys. He did well last year, yeah. Well, I think Bears fans would be pretty ecstatic. You're 2-2, 500. I see Grandizer predicting the W versus the Giants. And then Benjamin Sylvie in the house, one of our resident Cardinals fans, just stopping in. Shout out to you, Benjamin. Appreciate you being here, man. Okay, so 2-2, and then you travel to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Another divisional game early in the season, win or lose.
This one's tough. This one's going to be tough, but I'm also going to predict an L in this one. I just think as much as Kirk Cousins gets a bit of an overrated tag on him, he has his moments against the Bears. And right now, I think the Vikings are a little bit of a better football team than the Bears as we stand right now, especially offensively with Jefferson and Adam Thielen to pair with Cook. And the Bears are still young. So I am predicting the Bears are actually going to take an L in this contest.
Okay. Well, that's 2-3. And then you got a short week here, and you are playing on Thursday night, primetime football. You are hosting the Washington Commanders. Win or lose?
This one is also tough because the Bears have had a terrible history in primetime football, especially over the last couple of years. Primetime football for the Bears has been terrible, mainly because they always play Green Bay. But it's been terrible, but I don't think Carson Wentz is moving the needle for Washington, even though Washington's defense is stout. They get Chase Young back I think he's going to be healthy, but I think the Bears are going to come out with a win in this one. They're going to do just enough offensively, just enough to kind of squeak a win by, because I don't think Carson Wentz is going to elevate this Washington Commanders team to make them contenders, in my opinion. So I think the Bears are going to come out with a win. Finally, get a primetime football win.
Okay. That'd be a big win for Justin Fields and the Bears. Okay, all right. And I see Grandizer is predicting the same there. And then we got Julian Post. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on in. And so you're at 500 now. Mm-hmm. And 500 after 6 weeks, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. And then you travel to New England to take on the Patriots. We got a Mac Jones versus Justin Fields matchup. Can the Bears sneak out a win in New England?
Absolutely not. It's not going to happen. As much Mac Jones, both him and Justin Fields in second years, I just think the Patriots definitely are further along offensively. They have more around Mac Jones. And defensively, the Patriots did lose J.C. Jackson, but offensively, I just don't think the Bears are going to be at that point where they're gelled enough just yet to overtake this Patriots team. So I think that is going to be another loss in the Bears books.
Okay. So 3-4, and I see Julian predicting that he agrees that they're not going to do this, and same with Grandizer as well. But I love how Grandizer always provides context to his prediction. It's great. Yeah, maybe must beat the Bears to keep up with the Bills. It's true.
Yeah, it's definitely true.
So 3-4, and then you're traveling on the road to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. I know you would love to see, it's always nice when you beat the Cowboys.
Yes.
Win or lose.
This one is another toss-up as well, but I'm going to predict an L in this one as well. The Cowboys defense, I think, they're still improving. Offensively, we're going to see how they're going to look without Amari Cooper. And I just don't think the Bears are going to be up to the Cowboys level, even though the Cowboys are a team that week to week, you don't know what they're going to get. You don't know. The Bears are kind of similar, but the Cowboys week to week is like they're good one week and then they're bad, then they're good, then they're bad. So it's going to be tough. This one's probably going to be one of the games that the Bears can sneak up and win at anything possible. But as it stands right now, I think the Bears are ended up taking a loss in this contest.
Okay. So 3-5, and we just had some really cool people come in. I got a shout out here. The Sports Star, who was on our Tennessee Titans episode of MOOF. Good to see you. He is predicting a W versus the Cowboys. Okay. And TuneLink Maine, good to see you, my friend. And yes, thank you. I was happy to get that shout out on Clickbait Sports last week. That was pretty cool. But he is also predicting an L for the Bears. And then Corey, I love this name. Corey. He is also predicting an L. Shout out to you, man. So, 3-5. And then you got some home games now, and you welcome in the Miami Dolphins in week 9. Win or lose?
The Dolphins done a lot. They've done a lot, trading for Tyreek Hill, bringing in Raheem Mostert, Teron Armstead at the left tackle position. So, and Coach Mike Mitchell, I think he's going to elevate Tua's game. So I'm predicting this is going to be an L. And historically, the Bears have been bad against the Dolphins, no matter what record they have. 85, loss. 2006, Bears in the Super Bowl, loss. 2018, the Bears 12-4, lost to Miami. I don't see it being anything different. History is going to repeat itself. Miami is going to have a little bit too much speed offensively for the Bears to keep up with. So this one is going to be a loss.
Okay. Well, that's 3-6, and it seems a lot of the chat is agreeing with you, except for the Sports Star, who seems to be quite optimistic about the Bears. Okay. And I'll shout out Grandizer, who is a Dolphins fan, and so he gets excited whenever Dolphins win. Okay. All right. So we're 3-6 on the year. And then you are welcoming in the Detroit Lions for the first of 2 matchups on the year. Win or lose?
Detroit is one. I think they did a lot to improve with the drafting of Jamison Williams on offense, Hayden Hutchinson. They've done a lot to help with this team. They also brought in DJ Chark as well. But the Bears are at home. They've been well against Detroit at home. So I'm going to predict this as a W to end that 3-game losing streak. Detroit has improved, but I just don't think they will beat the Bears and the Bears at our home. So I'm predicting a W for this one.
Okay. That's okay. So you get rid of that losing streak that you were on here. Well, nothing cures, things like winning, and that's 4-6. So the Sports Star is saying he feels a lot of upsets. TuneLink Man is agreeing with you in that win. Grandizer's got the W there. Okay. All right. So that's 4-6 on the year. And then you travel to Atlanta to take on the Falcons in week 11. Win or lose?
That one is definitely going to be a win. The Falcons roster is pretty much all over the place. And also shout out to my older brother. He's actually a Falcons fan. I don't know how that happened. But my big brother is actually a Falcons fan. So
he's the rebel in the family.
There you go. He's the rebel. But Atlanta, we don't know what their quarterback situation is going to be. Mariota, or they drafted Desmond Ridder. I don't know what that's going to be. They got Calvin Ridley suspended for a year. They do have Kyle Pitts and I think Drake London, who they drafted in the first round. But defensively, outside of A.J. Terrell and Deion Jones, I don't really see too much for the Falcons to compete with. So I think the Bears are going to take a W in this one.
Okay. And TuneLink Maine saying easy W there. And Grandizer, every episode has to predict a tie.
Oh, wow.
So he's predicting a tie.
Bears haven't tied in a while, now that I think about it. It's been a while.
Well, I feel like we've seen too many ties. Like
as of late.
too common. Like every year, it seems like we got two. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so that's 5 and 6. You're creeping up to going to 500 again here, and you travel to New York to take on the Jets. Win or lose?
This one is going to be closer than a lot of Bears fans probably would expect or think. But
Justin Fields, Zach Wilson,
Zach Wilson, then Jets drafted Garrett Wilson from Ohio State. Shout out to him. And they nailed their first round. They nailed it. I think, and I also did a video about this. I think they're one of the more improved teams coming into 2022. But I still think the Bears have enough offensively to take a W over this Jets defense. I still think they got room to grow, even though Quentin Williams is one of the better interior presences. But I just still think the Bears offensively will run the football enough to beat the Jets. So I'm going to predict the win.
Okay. So that's I'm sure Bears fans would be over the moon. You're back at 500. At this point in the season, you're in that wild card race, especially in the NFC this year. Okay, all right. Grandizer he's predicting an L to the Jets. To McMahon, he's saying the Jets always.
Just had to bring up the butt fumble.
Okay, well, so clearly this next game is going to be one of the Bears' most important games of the year with your 6 and 6, and you host the Green Bay Packers in Week 13. You already lost them once. Is this the game that changes the Bears season?
No. 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 I cannot. I have to see the Bears beat the Packers once, legitimately, when Aaron Rodgers isn't hurt or when they don't stink.
Yeah.
Or anything else. I cannot predict the Bears win over the Packers. As much as Bear fans are going to hate me for saying it, it's not going to happen. The Bears are not beating the Packers legitimately. Even though they lost Devontae Adams and they lost Valdez Scantling.
It's not going to happen. Oh, man. And yeah, Grandizer's agreeing with you there. And shout out the Remelia Sports Report. Thanks for tuning in. And yes, he's reminding me, thank you for having Allen Robinson primed and ready to go. The Rams are excited to have him on the
team. I knew somebody was going to mention it. I knew it. I knew it.
Oh, man. Okay. And let's see here. So you're at 6 and 7, and then it is Week 14, which is the Bears bye week, which means it is time for
Bye Week Hot Takes. The hottest takes on the bye week.
Yes, it's time for Bye Week Hot Takes, the part of the show where we take a little break from predictions, and we have 3 hot takes found from all corners of the internet about the Chicago Bears. APW Sports has not seen these hot takes. He's going to be reacting to them raw. And we try to find some hot takes from Bears fans or people talking about the Bears. This is one. And again, these are hot takes found from the internet. APW is going to react to them, tell them why they're right, why they're wrong. And the first one is, the Bears are the worst team in the NFL and have the least amount of star players.
I'm not going to say worst. And a least amount of star players, you know what? I can almost agree with that one. Okay. The least amount of star players, I can almost agree with that one. Even I think Darnell Mooney is starting to develop into one. I think Justin Fields eventually will develop into one. Jalen Johnson I believe, is a very underrated corner. Roquan, like I said earlier, is a very underrated linebacker. But as far as star power, outside of the element of Justin Fields, to be honest, that part is right. The Bears really don't have a lot of star elements. But the worst team in the NFL, not a chance.
Okay. Okay. So it's kind of like half and half. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I can respect that. Hot take number 2 is Bears tight end Cole Kmet will be Justin Fields' top target this year and lead the team in receptions.
Top. I'm not going to say top. He might be number 2, depending on how Luke Getsy runs this offense. He might be the second most targeted. especially as that security blanket type of tight end. I think Darnell Mooney is definitely going to be the number one targeted team person on his team. He's the number one receiver, but Cole Kmet would definitely be number two. And as far as lead the team in receptions, I can't predict any of that because we all know Cole Kmet has a bit of a history of dropping the football. So lead the team in receptions, not so much, but I think he would be the number two targeted player on the team.
Okay. And I will caveat that this came from a comment section where I believe it was Bears fans debating that because I sense there's some Bears fans that aren't sold on Darnell Mooney as a wide receiver.
Yeah, I've seen some of that too.
And so this particular person was arguing that they can't rely on him and that Cole Kmet will be Justin Fields' top target this year. And so, interesting take nonetheless. Yeah. Okay, the third and final hot take, and this is an interesting one. I did not know about this until I read about this, but maybe you can provide some more context. Mm-hmm. The Bears lost an OTA practice because of NFL rule violations for excessive physicality during practices in May. This shows Eberflus is changing the culture as the Bears' new head coach.
Yeah, that is something I definitely seen. It was kind of surprising, but the culture changes in Chicago from Matt Nagy to him. I've seen a lot of players. I think it was maybe Eddie or Jalen Johnson in particular that said it's a new refresh. The whole culture change from Nagy to Eberflus. I've said that Eberflus was going to bring a whole lot of, number one, accountability that Matt Nagy didn't bring, and it's going to bring a whole lot of just putting the fire under the players that Matt Nagy didn't. So the culture change, that is the biggest thing I'm looking forward to seeing, especially when things get tough. In past years, the Bears have been typically to slip when things got tough. So the culture change is real in Chicago, and I am looking forward to what more of Matt Eberflus brings under that guy we had last in Nagy.
Okay, so it sounds like Bears fans are looking for a little grit from their team.
Yes,
and,
yes.
That maybe this new coaching regime under Eberflus, his name is a tongue twister.
Yeah, it was a tongue twister. It took me a while to learn it too.
Yeah. I feel like you could post a video on your channel just like trying to say it 5 times fast.
Yeah, I've tried that. Eberflus,
nah. Quick question before we exit the segment here, coming from Grandizer is who would you say are the 3 worst teams in the NFL?
Number 1, the Falcons.
I
think the Falcons would be one of the worst teams in football. This is a tough one. I might have to go with Houston.
Okay.
As much as I love Lovie Smith, I'm probably going to have to go with them just looking at the roster.
Yeah.
And 3, this one is tough too, but it might be blasphemous for me to say this. It could be Seattle, only because I don't believe in Drew Lock at all. And Geno Smith is the backup, and he's a backup for a reason.
Yep.
So I think the quarterback position for Seattle, even though they have Tyler Lockett and DK, they could surprisingly be one of the 3 worst.
Okay, fair enough. And then I see Corey coming in saying that he's happy with the culture, the new coach. I'm just saying the new coaching regime. And were you happy with the hire, or was there another coach in mind that you were hoping the Bears would have gotten?
Eberflus was not a guy that was on my radar. One guy that I was hoping they pried out of Michigan, even though I hate Michigan. I was hoping they pried Jim Harbaugh out of Michigan. I was kind of hoping they didn't. I'm glad they didn't go the Eric Bieniemy way, but I think the main guy I was kind of looking for was Harbaugh.
Okay, that's fair. Well, this has been
Bye-week Hot Takes. The hottest takes on the bye week.
So again, a bit of a late bye week there for the Bears. But before that, going into it, you predicted a 6-7 record so far, and then you out of the bye week, You welcome in the Philadelphia Eagles to town, win or lose.
This might come as a shock, but I think the Bears can actually pull out a win in this game. Hear me out.
Okay, let's
The
hear it.
Bears have a history of winning games that they are not supposed to win. They get one a year that they win that they have no business winning. Philly is a whole hell of a lot of a better football team than the Bears right now. But it's just something about Philly in particular that I think the Bears might pull off an upset in this game and actually get a W. Even though Philly is better, Philly's probably going to win the NFC East, in my opinion. The Bears have a history of pulling out that one crazy win. This is probably going to be the game. So I'm predicting a win.
Okay. Well, we love an upset prediction. That does take the Bears to 500, 7-7, which I'm sure Bears fans would just be like, "Are you kidding me? Like, this is amazing."
Yeah.
And, again, you're looking for statement wins for your young quarterback, right?
Yes.
And the team around him. I do see a lot of people predicting the L in here. And Corey, I am going to hold your. That's a great question. That I'm going to put a little star there, and we'll come back to your question after we predict the next two games. But shout out John from Pure Gentleman Fantasy Sports. Good to see you there as well. He is agreeing with you that it could be a letdown game for the Eagles. So 7-7, and then you are welcoming in your final home game of the year, and it's a doozy. You get to play the Buffalo Bills week 16. Any shot of the Bears pulling off an upset 2 weeks in a row?
No, not against Buffalo. Buffalo, I'm probably giving this away a little bit too early. I think they're going to be the AFC representation of the Super Bowl, in my opinion. Okay. I think Buffalo is going to be the representation of the Super Bowl. Josh Allen has probably been one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch. I've been high on this Bills team the last 2 years. They dominated us in the preseason last year, and it was just a preseason. So I'm imagining what this team is going to do to us in a regular season, even though we have a new coaching staff. But I think Buffalo is just too good. And then they added Von Miller on top of that, having Davius White healthy. Because if he was healthy, they probably would have been in the Super Bowl with that whole debacle. They blew it down the stretch against Kansas City. So Buffalo, this is probably going to be one of the Bears, if not the biggest L of the year.
Okay. Well, you're so you come off of the high of the Eagles win, but then maybe get brought down to earth with the Buffalo game. But you're 7-8 on the year, and then you travel to Detroit to take on the Lions for the second time of the year. Win or lose in Detroit?
This is going to be a close game. Both teams still in rebuild mode. Both teams, I think they'll have a little bit of footing under them by the time this game comes along. And this might be blasphemous for me to say. Detroit, I think, is going to beat us that week. Detroit, I believe, is going to beat us that week. They're going to split home and home. Detroit is improved. And I think at that point, Detroit is going to be, they have a little bit of footing, and I think they're going to beat the Bears that week.
Okay. All right. Well, final game of the year. It does look like the Bears will have a losing record by your prediction. However, you've already said that the Bears are into their rebuild here and new coaching staff. And you're at 7 wins, and then week 18 you have a home game versus the Minnesota Vikings. You lost to them once in the year in your prediction. Are you going to get swept by the Vikings?
Unfortunately, the Bears are going to get swept by the Minnesota Vikings. I think at this point of the season, Minnesota is going to have a lot more to play for than the Bears will, because I think Minnesota is going to probably be in that playoff contending window. And I think winning this game is probably could prevail them to the playoffs, depending on how the rest of the season goes. Even though the Bears are at home, I think the Bears are going to take an L in this one and finish the season with only 7 wins.
Okay. Well, 7-10 though. Again, obviously you want more. You want as many wins as possible. However, year one from a roster that they've traded away Khalil Mack and lost some other talent.
Akeem Hicks is gone.
Yeah, Hicks.
Allen Robinson is
Allen
gone.
Robinson. I didn't want to rub salt in the wound too much. We did have a great question here, but so to finish off your prediction, you are predicting a 7-10 record. But Corey asks, are there any free agents that you think that can help the Bears now that are still available?
One that's been popping up a lot, and I actually did a video on this, is Julio Jones. I think that's a name it's been kind of been talked about a lot lately, especially that Julio is still free on the market.
Yeah.
I think that might be one that they could explore, but I don't think Ryan Poles and management are going to go that direction. But if it's anyone that I think that they could help us more and help elevate and development of Justin Fields, will be a guy like Julio.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Grandizer's predicting a 4-12-1 record for the Bears.
I mean, I can see where people come from looking at this roster. I can see it. I can see why people would say that, but I just think the culture change will bring a whole lot of oomph and a whole lot of fire to this Bears team. So,
yeah, and as someone who I experienced a drastic turnaround when you got the right coach in, when we went from Jeff Fisher to Sean McVay, and just instantly changed the culture, changed the accountability. Getting a good coach, it does wonders for your team.
Yes.
AVW, do you feel the Bears have a better offensive line this year? Because the Bears have not had a good offensive line in many years.
Yes. Honestly, you can't get any worse than what it was last year. You can't get any worse. We've seen bad offensive line in the Jay Cutler era. We've seen it in the Trubisky era. We saw it last year. I think the signings of Lucas Patrick and Dakota Dozier, you have Tekvin Jenkins heading into this second year, Brom in his second year, a veteran presence in Whitehair. You're going to see more of an improvement, any improvement from last year's anything, but especially when you let up 9 sacks in one game,
right?
And you give up 5 to Myles Garrett. So any improvement is an improvement with this Bears offensive line. So I think you're going to see a much improved offensive line from what we saw last year.
Okay, awesome. Well, AVW, I appreciate you so much coming on the show, lending your fandom and your expertise. I love the content that you produce on your channel. I encourage everyone. The link to his channel is in the description below. Make sure to follow him on Twitter, all that jazz. But AVW, what can people expect when they subscribe to your channel? I know you do a little bit more than Bear stuff, but the Bears are kind of your focus.
The Bears are my focus, but you can expect, number one, honesty. I'm not going to be one of those biased Bear fans that's going to say everything is good. When you need critiquing or something bad happens or I see something, I'm going to say it. I've said it about Nagy last 2 years. If people go watch some of those older ones. So I'm one of those fans that's not biased. I do watch the whole league. So I'm not going to be a biased fan. I'm going to give my honest opinions, no type of clickbait, anything like that. Just pure honest thoughts and honest opinions of things I see.
Okay, awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing more of your content this upcoming season. And shout out to JH Sports coming in. I know he's a Bears fan. He coming in saying, "Yo, what's up, JH?" Well, this has been episode 20 of MOOF. We have some more coming up. APW, stick around and we'll chat just afterwards. And for all of you watching at home, live with us or on the replay, thank you so much for watching. And we will see you in the next episode of MOOF.